August 24th Jackson County Commission meeting to order. Have our roll call.
Mr. 1, Mr. Duffy. Present. District 2, Mr. Goodwin. Present. District 3, Mr. Miller. Present. District 4, Mr. Ledwell. Present. Chair also present.
We have a quorum present. We can conduct business. We have our invocation by Mr. Porter and our pledge by Mr. Laurel.
God our Father in heaven, we're blessed to be here. We're blessed to live in this great county and this great country. We pray that you protect us and protect our county and our country. We're so thankful for these men that have given their time to serve the people of Jackson County. We pray that you'll be with them as they have hard decisions to make. We pray for wisdom and discernment and compassion for those decisions that are made. We pray that you watch over us all. Guide us and direct us every day. Forgive us when we fail you and fail others. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. We have the minutes for August 10th meeting before us. Any changes before we proceed with that? Have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Next item is approval of the agenda. We have 5 items, including the budget hearing at the end of this meeting. Do we have any changes before we proceed? We have a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second motion.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Have no awards or presentations. We've had one person sign up to speak. Is it Amy, trustee, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that to help you guys so that you better know what the people want. They know that you've already put out more than so many million and committed yourself to fix the roads. And we're counting on this budget for giving that 1 cent tax. Okay? So any attempt to blame whatever cuts you have to make on other people or the people who voted no is really going to make you look bad. So I just wanted to offer for you, all you need to do is be honest with what you're doing and cut the budgets where it's fair, and that might mean your salaries.
Thank you. We will continue to be honest and work our best to be honest with the decisions we make. Going on to new business, the first item is motion to approve and sign a contract with All Gas for the Jackson County Park. This is a contract, an annual contract. The price is actually reduced. The price is reduced from last year. This does need to be approved by the commission, however, before we can proceed with it. Mr. Barnes has a procedure that he's going to go on this or tomorrow morning, I think, is why he could not be here today. But we can move forward with this afternoon, or if there are any questions, outstanding questions or comments. We have a motion to approve the contract. Motion and a second. Okay, any discussion?
That's for a full year, correct?
Yes, this is for full year. This is who we used last year also. As I said, the price has been reduced this year. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Okay. Next item, motion to approve the request of Northeast Alabama Water, Sewer, and Fire Protection District to amend their articles of incorporation and bylaws to authorize board members to receive compensation to be paid from the funds available to the district. And this is for compensation of $200 a month. This is something that the commission has to approve. In fact, I think it was approved previously, but has to be clarified. Is that correct, Mr. Porter? This is no cost to the county, correct? Everything comes from that the Northeast Alabama Water, Sewer, and Fire Protection District. So are there questions or comments on this? The reason that we have to participate in this is because we do have an appointment on that board. Any questions or comments? Do we have a motion on how to proceed?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion, we have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Okay. Next item is consider a motion to authorize and direct the county attorney to request an official opinion of the Alabama Attorney General regarding the interpretation and application of code section regarding from the Code of Alabama as the same applies to the required distribution of the annual Alabama Business Privilege and Corporate Shares Tax of 1999 received by the county. This is something that came to our attention about a month or so ago. We've been trying to research whether or not these dollars can actually be used for county general fund purposes, or if they have to be distributed as we have been distributing them. So based on the research that's been done with the auditors and with the state, feels like the best opportunity to get a clear and concise answer would be to send in a request for an attorney general's opinion with the question as to whether or not those funds can be utilized by the county in other ways. So are there questions or comments on this item? Any questions or comments?
Do you have any idea how long it will take to get a response back from AD?
We can attempt to expedite it, but ultimately we're going to.
And right now, the existing's been distributed upon different little groups.
It's based off of a spreadsheet that existed. We don't know where the spreadsheet came from or who created it, but it's been that way as far as we can tell. The dollars have been distributed in that way for several years.
We've got conflicting answers, correct?
Yes, from between the auditor's office and state department of revenue, correct? Any other questions or comments? Okay, so do we have a motion? If this is approved, then I'll work with Mr. Porter to get the question written, and we'll present that to the AG as quickly as possible so that we can, obviously we need to move forward with the budget planning, but, this would give us a little bit of reprieve if it can be utilized.
We freeze those funds until we find out.
We have, we've not written those checks out. We actually received the funds in the end of July, is that correct? Oh, was it that? Okay.
Who's been the recipients of this fund?
Several of them.
You have a copy?
We can get it around. Been education, municipalities, different entities. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so do we have a motion to approve this authorization?
Make a motion.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second motion.
Motion and second. Any discussion, further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Okay. Next item, motion to approve IDB appropriation. This was discussed last week. This would be a $30,000 appropriation to the Jackson County IDB for industrial development activities. And again, I think we need to put either a 3-month or 6-month time frame if these dollars aren't used in the appropriate way for that industrial development, then they need to be sent back to the county. So before any further discussion, do we have a motion to approve this item? And we need an idea on the stipulation, 3 months or 6 months.
So move on 3 months.
Okay, so a motion to approve the appropriation of $30,000 with 3 months' notice. Okay, motion, we have a second.
Second that motion.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this item? This will be funds from 112, so. Motion and second, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Okay. That concludes our regular items, so we'll take a very quick recess, and then we'll enter into our budget meeting. We'll hand out all these papers while we have that recess. And we'll move forward like that, so a very quick recess. enter into our budget meeting now. I want to go over the organizational charts first, and then we'll talk about the budget cuts. So first, in regard to the organizational charts, again, this is what we presented or talked about last week, I think, at the work session. You have two organizational charts before you, and real quickly we'll go over the commission office or the finance office organizational chart. All this does is change the location of the personnel, who they report to. There's also financial administrator clarifies that, and we'll need to get the job descriptions from Commissioner Manning and working on the job description for these positions to get them updated and get that rate pay clarified. So this is just kind of an update from last week, a little change in the organization presented as we have discussed last week. So in this particular one, are there any questions at this time regarding this setup?
Are we changing any of the duties stuff?
We'll get, once we get the job descriptions, we'll present those before we vote on anything, and those job descriptions will have a clarification on the duties. Mr. Manning is trying to work to get those updated right now. I just wanted to make sure everybody had an updated copy of kind of where we were looking ahead.
Mr. Campbell, are you the one that filled in the names under the chart?
We're gonna-
I'm going-
yeah, this is pretty-
oh, we're doing it. I'm sorry. That one's good.
Okay. No question, no other questions on the commission? Okay, let's look then at the public works one, and Mr. Campbell's here. We went over all of these. This is the number of employees we have, with the exception of one additional HMT1, which is a temp right now, which is added or removed down at the very bottom there. This is, again, the current number of employees and their current job label, with the exception of the supervisors. As we all know, we went through the, what's the word I'm looking for, interview process a few weeks back to look at the supervisor positions and what could we put into those positions. The recommendations are located here for the supervisors and the lead positions for the three crews that we have. Again, that's a recommendation from the committee, the hiring committee. That all can be discussed. And then the number of people in each group, that's something that we hope that once the supervisors are in place, we can designate where those, who's going to go where. But this was, again, really, as far as under the supervisors and lead positions, was really just to lay out how many people we have and what their current role is. So all the HMT3s, 2s, and 1s, that is their current position. So, before any other questions, do you have anything else you want to say on that or add to that, Mr. King?
No, sir, did that cover you, Mr. Lovell? That cover your question?
Well, I've got another one, but it don't have to be. I thought the service group was just gonna be consistent around 3 to 4 people.
Yes, sir, that, as Mr. Hodges said, that it was really to fit the folks that were there in organization-wise. With basically sharing some road duties as well as the construction, the service side was expanded. Otherwise, we were concerned with the construction leg of that organization being so robust for one supervisor.
You don't think we're gonna get back in the whole reason we did it was to quit pulling from construction. When you're out there doing construction, to go catch a service call, or we're not gonna get in the same situation.
I don't feel like we will. I think we can we can follow the intent of the sign up on providing the service with that organization and a patching operation out of that as well.
Any paving that we would do, would you plan to do that under the construction?
It would be construction, paving, heavier construction, bridge repair, things of that nature.
And the way I understood from the previous conversation, as far as, again, this is a tentative, what you want to do is get those supervisors in place and let them help you determine the needs.
Yes, like he's saying, anything below that lead position now, the supervisor selected upon approval would help in the selection of how many folks, where they all land, etc. But that service leg, that organization, the work orders that come into Public Works is really what's going to drive the operations of that leg. So it would be service oriented, basically solely based on those work orders.
And another point I think that was made on the vegetation drainage, I think we can it's understood we can be more efficient in that process, and then time may be able to move some of those folks over to construction as well, or to any other needed tasks.
Yes, sir. It'll be beefed up while we concentrate on getting the vegetation that's on the roadside down now in preparation for a pre-emergent treatment for mire with the spraying essentially. And then once that process is under control where it has been before, you'll see a lot of those folks able to migrate from that leg of the organization into assist construction and service.
Any other questions or comments?
I don't have any more. Anybody else got one?
Excuse me, can I ask them,
It is our county engineer. Yes, did you have something else?
The mechanic
Yes,
that's
sir.
over in service,
Yes, sir.
is that where you chose to leave him? You're not going to put him back in the shop?
We're exploring two different routes of that. One, either it's our decision that it would be best suited for, we're going to attempt the organization that exists on your chart to where we can reduce the folks in the shop by one.
Okay.
And given that position no longer exists, the mechanic that's out on the road now would be classified according to the job he's performing.
Okay.
So he would become a HMT if he's going to perform an HMT job duty. If that
Yes,
makes
sir.
sense.
I got you.
Other questions or comments? In regard to these positions, the lead position, the job description still, I think, needs to be amended there. The HMT 3s, 2s, and 1s will be reviewed and see if there are any changes in that. You do see that there are 4 laborers on this chart, and of course, as we had discussed before at previous meetings, we actually passed the change in that. If any of those laborers get their CDLs, they'll move to HMT 1 so that we no longer have laborers in that chart, as we need everybody to be able to operate equipment. So those 4 will be eligible for that. Again, this is the update on this. Once we get those final job descriptions, hopefully we'll have them by the first work session next month so that everybody can take a look at those descriptions. And then by the second meeting in September, we'll be able to approve those organizational charts. Is there any other questions or comments on that? All right, and one other point I do want to make, and you showed me the list earlier. Do you recall how many folks in the past 2.5 years that we've reduced in staff, 7, 8 staff members?
Yeah, it's 7 workers of HMT 1 through 3 are labor classifications. A foreman position and a superintendent position are no longer there.
And none of those positions have been replaced to this point. So going forward, obviously, I think the recommendation is to leave the staff with how it is and determine if the work can be done with the reduced staff. So we're going to continue taking a look at that. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Now on to the budget sheet. Mr. Manning had put this together. Do you want to go over kind of what's on this, Mr. Manning?
Each one of you, if you look down the left-hand column on the top of the section there, that was last year's appropriations. So we'll be removing all of those. That's $118,193 in appropriations that are left. Registrar, Board of Registrar's office.
Let me interrupt something real quick.
Hey, if y'all want to move up, or Ms. Miles, if you want to move up, that way y'all can hear. I know it's hard for y'all to hear.
I don't think y'all got the voice for old.
Sorry about that. Before you move on the appropriations, I know we discussed cutting all of those. I can't remember where I was going to go. I'm sorry. Okay, continue. If I think about it, I'll let you. Oh, that was the thing. The total dollars that we need to cut, we've looked at the total dollars that need to be cut in order to balance the budget for this next year, and the estimated dollars are $700,000. And the reason is, of course, we're operating on a $350,000 deficit. We have certain insurance costs and other costs that are going up roughly $100,000, and then we have the expected loss of TVA in lieu of dollars for next year. Now, that's the big question as to what's that going to do. But based on last year's, that we feel comfortable with the dollars that we set on that. So I talked to Mr. Manning about coming up with something to kind of organize how cuts could be made to meet that 700,000, and that's what you have supported. So we wanted to make that point real quick. Yes,
Back to the total line, $118,193 appropriations. By state law and the Board of Registrar's offices, we're required to pay $60 per day. We're currently paying $80 per day, so we're taking that back. Our proposal is to take that back to $60 a day, which would be $15,000. The reduction of salary, as you see right here on the next line, for all the employees, is $458,000. That would include going to the 4-day work week, closing the courthouse on Friday. There's a little bit more room in the district attorney's department that I think the county may have been paying to about $20,000. We're looking at getting the exact number on that and getting that back to the bare minimum. Close another door in the courthouse security, and just maintaining one door going forward. About $40,000 for that. And then in the all the different COA, rural public transportation, senior RX, all the different agencies out there, and looking at the budget there, we're looking at removing at least $20,000 more from those. And the retiree insurance rates have increased substantially this year, so a suggestion was made to maybe look at reducing the increase there for another $20,000. And those total $691,193. Again, that's the proposal that we've looked at this point.
And based on this, we looked over it earlier, based on this, the big question is still the AG opinion on business privilege tax. Obviously, that could reduce some of the liability on this, correct?
That's correct. We did not include that amount in that.
Ain't gonna be that much of a difference, so, really.
That would be,
After looking at this earlier today, Mr. Manning, obviously a lot of questions, and we'll step through it step by step, I guess, but the first question on appropriations, are there any questions, concerns, things on the appropriation list, that first graph that need to be discussed or just talk about? On the Jackson County Health Department, $27,000 of that from the general fund appropriation, and the other $27,000 from solid waste. So, obviously, I think we probably do need to cut, the $27,000 on the general fund side, and we can discuss further during the committee meetings or budget meetings with the solid waste, whether it needs to be cut from solid waste department. But that doesn't directly affect the general fund, just this $27,000.
We made that appropriation to retain a inspector. We had 3 inspectors, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and after we took office, the state cut out 2 of them, and we made the appropriation to retain,
Yes, that's what we were told by the state. So I don't know if cutting this appropriation in half is going to maintain that one, or what the situation will be. Obviously, if they're not supporting us from that standpoint, if they can't support one, we would probably need to cut the entire appropriation out, I would think.
That's what her supervisor from South Alabama told Mr. Rumble and I, if we couldn't provide the funding in its entirety, they were gonna have to let it go. So if we cut half of it, we'll have to cut all of it.
Any other questions on the appropriations? The extension service, that's the 4-H program. Those are 2 of the biggest ones. Obviously, several different things in here, but any other questions or comments on the appropriation side?
Will it be left up to the entities to seek other funding?
It wouldn't be our responsibility to find that funding for them.
Can we get clarification from the state whether or not we're going to lose the
Yes,
one?
but before we finalize everything, the biggest point of that is to make sure there aren't any immediate concerns or something that we have a feeling. What I'd like to do, as soon as we pass the budget, we'll send out letters, but I'd like to have a general motion where the commission looks to be headed so that I can begin to respond when we have the questions.
I can't see how in our current condition we can afford to pay any of them, but I want to make sure that everybody's aware, you know, what's taking place with their funding.
Right. And that's the purpose of going through it now. Any other questions on any of that?
On the appropriations,
On appropriation? Okay. All right, next part comes to the additional cut that we've talked about. The registrar's office, the county does support that 60 days. Do we support it $60 per day?
We do the $20 per day.
20, okay, we do $20 a day for those, and of course, we would cut that funding back, our portion of that, the state pays the rest of it.
And I think that, did they change this time also? All the people around, did they reappoint this year?
They'll reappoint, yes. The DA reductions, real quick, again, that was, as Mr. Manning said, to cut back to what the bare minimum would be by law. And the 13,000, that is for,
Well, that's for the amount that they the judge.
is that the additional attorney? Okay. So that additional 13,000, which is possible, is $10,000 we pay for an attorney to work on the child, what's the word? Child support collections, and then 3,000 for what we supplement the circuit court, what do you call this? Corporate orders. So that's the 13,000 possible. That's something to be discussed whether we want to do that or not, in addition to the 20,000 that's set there. Any discussion on that item?
Well, my suggestion, before we cut appropriations, let's cut that too. That's my opinion.
Any other thoughts on it? I've not had a discussion regarding the attorney that handles the collections. Sorry, what was it again? The child support collections. I've not talked to the DA about that. I think the DA is aware that we're going to cut the other appropriation back. So if the commission is seriously looking at that, I'll discuss that with the DA too and report back at the next budget meeting.
I'd like to see, like to hear what you got to say about it.
Okay. Okay, so any other questions or comments on that? All right, close the door at the courthouse. We've got, there are two items on this. I didn't bring the paper up here. What I'd like to do right now, whenever someone is out, courthouse security, or we have one person out, we actually have to bring someone in and pay them to manage that door. What I'd like to do is until October 1, when we have someone out, go ahead and close the south side door so that we're not subsidizing or paying another deputy to come in and manage that door. We hire part-timers, is that correct, Sheriff?
Yes, sir.
We hire part-timers to do that. So immediate recommendation would be to go ahead and close the south door when we have to, instead of hiring a part-timer. And then October 1, we would close that south side door full-time. And I believe we've got one person retiring from the sheriff's department, so that would cover that cut in salary there. So questions or comments on that?
would we not be obligated to publicize the closing of the door?
Yes, we would. Well, I don't know if we're obligated, but I think we definitely would, which
How are we
is,
going to know that? Someone calls in sick.
well, we'll have a notice stating that, and can we do that, Mr. Ford? Okay, yeah, we'll just have a notice on the door stating that
That day.
it's, that day, and the possibility, we'll let the public know that there's a possibility the south door may be closed if staff is not available that day.
Mr. Chairman, are they a law that says we have to keep some security at the door?
With that, Mr. Ford.
We've been through that when we got the security. I know the sheriff remembers all this. There is a provision, and one thing we'll have to look at is courthouse security plan. If we're going to close the south door, we'll have to amend the courthouse security plan to make sure that it is in compliance with the courthouse security plan. But there is no specific law that says you have to have security. There are a lot of laws, and we went through this several years ago when we got it to start with, that indicate that you're supposed to have security, but there's no law that says that you got to have specific.
My understanding is the courtrooms are to be secured by the county. whether that be bailiffs or it be security at the door, it's the same thing. You know, you can take the security out down there, but you put bailiffs up here, you're paying the same money. You know, we're just on a merry-go-round. Is that correct? Courtrooms have to be secured by law. That's what I thought.
In that sense, I think that's why closing the door would be a better option, right?
Probably. You know, again, you have to look at, I'm not done with the provisions, I've been looking at them, but there's not an option of removing security
Totally.
entirely. It's just not. You either put them in the courtrooms or you leave them at the doors.
We could move them upstairs, use the fire marshal, correct, floor plan.
That I don't know, but it'd be difficult to secure upstairs. You've got multiple locations upstairs too.
And all of these were discussed when we closed the doors to start with, and so these were not new discussions. And I'm not saying it's valid.
Right.
It was just determined previously that it was not feasible to close upstairs only, because you've got so many entrances coming up, it'd be just about impossible to do that.
Right.
You know, I understand, but, you know, back then, we wouldn't have money. And to me, we're at a place where everything's gonna be on the table, and we can't put them in the school. The resource over in the school now, but it's kind of hard to choke, that we're gonna make sure the courthouse is secure, but we're not gonna make sure our schools are secure.
I think the point, like Mr. Laurel was making, is that, you know, you have to have the levels of security in the courtroom, and we have 3 judges. If we have court going on 3 times, if we have going on twice, or two different courts going on, you still got to provide that security for it. So, you know, there's that question there.
If we take them off the door, then we could have to have 3 in 3 different courts.
That's correct.
Or more, depending on the need.
You incur more cost if you come off the door.
In this reduction, are we gonna have an audit finding due to the state law that says we can't produce the sheriff's budget, or is it?
Courthouse security is outside the sheriff's budget.
We won't have that in mind.
Right, right.
Mr. Chairman, we didn't skip the 4-hour reduction, did we?
I'll go back to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No, we'll go on. The COA RPT, senior RX transfer, we appropriated $40,000, or we did this year. There's some things we're trying to look at to raise some additional funds there, but again, based on the current cuts, recommendation on this sheet would be cut $20,000 and possible $20,000. Is that correct? You just cut half of that?
Yeah, that's what we did.
Okay. Now, the problem with cuts to RPT, to senior RX and different programs there, any dollar we cut off of RPT is basically $2 that we're cutting because federal dollars match our local dollars. So, obviously, I think we need to definitely consider this to help bring the budget where it needs to be. Do we cut the whole thing? Do we cut part of it? I think that's why I put half and half in here. But that's something that we need to discuss and look into further also. But what are thoughts or comments on that right now?
The Council on Aging, they're part of the appropriation that we're discussing. Is this the part-time drivers? What does this entail?
This is if you want to explain kind of what RPT all entails, or?
There are actually 2 different programs. RPT is funded separately from Aging, which is the COA.
Okay.
And under Aging, we also have Mid-Waiver and some Alabama Cares, different little pots of money, some MOUs that we have. Like Mr. Hodges said, we have about, with RPT, we have about a 2-for-1 return on that money. And then the aging programs, there is no required county match, but we have to stay within that budget.
Can you tell us about approximately how many seniors benefit from these programs?
Well, weekly, we're sending out, under the aging program, weekly we're sending out about 1,500 meals. So that's 1,500 individuals per week on that. we have roughly 1,000 to 1,200 people who ride the bus.
Yes, ma'am.
And we have numerous people that come into the centers that are not part of the nutrition program, or they're driving themselves in. I would say that we have probably 50 to 60 people a day that fit in that category.
Okay. Thank you.
What about the other, I think there's some that gets carried to the doctor elderly, is that part of this?
It's RPT.
RPT is rural public transportation, and they are part of that.
Thank you.
So these dollars are split up between RPT and between the aiding programs, kind of as needed. But when we send the budget to the federal, or to the state, for those dollars, every dollar that gets cut from that basically is cutting federal dollars, is that correct?
Right.
$20,000 cut in appropriation, I mean, it wouldn't completely do away with those programs, but it would greatly impact them.
Any other questions or comments? So again, another thing,
I got one more question. The meals that you're talking about, is that provided all through the county or just in Scottsboro?
All through the county.
Thank you.
any other questions or comments? So another thing, consider, let's look at that, and then the next budget meeting, we'll discuss that further. Retiree insurance, Mr. Venable, I think, had option on this.
With $64 increase for retiree insurance, I mean, I just want everybody to think, are we going to continue to absorb the increases in our retiree insurance? Is that something that we're willing to look at if it's starting to get way and above what we pay for an employee insurance? Our employees at a $46? The 64
family.
retired, 46, and I'm current, on family insurance. That equates to a 30 cents an hour pay cut on somebody that's paying for family coverage insurance. Everybody will do some research on that. We can really look at it next week.
I want you to consider something also. These folks took these low-paying jobs with the guaranteed, kind of, there's no guarantee in life. This was one of the benefits that these folks chose to take these lower-paying jobs, so they had it when it was time to retire. This is one thing I'm very passionate about. It bothers me that we're even talking about it, but I know we have to. When these folks take these jobs at $10, $11, $12 an hour, when they could get a private sector job, a whole lot more money, that's the reason they chose to take them. And please do not forget, we're still in the people business. I know we're in a financial bind, and we've got to do something, but we cannot let people be our second thought. That's just my opinion, but this bothers me about as bad as anything. The seniors bother me, we're having to cut them, but the retirees, that bothers me almost as bad as anything we're doing. These other folks have got ways to try to create new funding where a retiree and a senior does not.
I understand completely what you're saying. I see also, though, when Mr. Venable comes from, we've absorbed these increases over the past several years, and
Right.
of course, the cost has increased tremendously.
Oh, I know it.
None of it's fun decisions. I mean, we need to look at everything.
That's right. But are we absorbing immediate employees' costs
Just stands.
as it stands?
Well, in this proposal, technically not.
Mhm.
Before we move on to the last thing, which is the reduction of salary, you see on here the closed number of polling places, the extension building, the forestry, the state offices, and the courthouse, which it sounds like some of those are going to be leaving us with the announcement today, or possibly. Those are all items that are trying to quantify. I don't think any of that's anything that we're going to find this year. And based on the discussions with Mr. Manning, I think the goal should be to get the 700,000 deficits, get those dollars cut so we'll be prepared for next year, and then immediately begin looking at some of these other options so that as we see either dollars come in or funds cut elsewhere, we can start to hopefully we can replenish some of these and you know, if it is retiree insurance or if it is the senior programs, whatever the case may be, that you can start putting those dollars back into it. And that kind of leads into the last thing and the biggest thing, because even if you look at all these other things, there really aren't a lot of dollars there. The largest thing is the 4-hour reduction of salary. This has been discussed a lot, obviously. We talked about the possibility of closing the courthouse. We could close the courthouse one day and have 4 9-hour days. We could close half a day. Any way we approach it, we've got, that's the only other place that we can cut is in salaries. And this is what I think some think may be the best way to pursue, but we've got to discuss exactly how those hours will affect the opening days of the courthouse. The bottom line is it's going to have to come from salaries somehow. So with that, questions, comments on that item?
I have additional concerns about which employees or which offices can be cut. I understand, I know that we're already operating on the bare minimum in several offices, but there are some positions in the county that are essential to the welfare and safety of the public and not to mention the inmates in the county jail. I think the liability issue outweighs any savings that we would have in reducing the hours on some of these positions. That's just something that I'm considering.
And on this 4-hour reduction, I mentioned, it's only the general fund that you see right here. That doesn't mean that everything else will be cut. That'll be up to the county commission to make. But this is only general fund, so that would include, as Mr. Miller said, the jail, the sheriff's department, revenue office, the mapping office commission, our custodial services, the probate office. So it's all the general fund items that you have included in this cost, because that's what affects our general fund.
Mr. Porter, is there not a provision that says the Jackson County Courthouse shall be open Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30 for the courts?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I have to look that up.
Well, I want you to look, because I've tried to look at this.
I think what the plan would be to leave the courthouse open for, you still have security for need for the courts, but all county offices will be closed.
All county offices closed, but the courthouse is going to remain open.
Right. And again, if that's a day, if that's 4 hours for the half a day, however we want to do it, if we pursue this option, then that would be the case. Now, the flexibility in this option again, and the goal would be to try and bring funds in, whether that's pursue those TVA and move taxes from the legislative delegation, pursue that, continue to pursue that, or pursue it further, whether that be finding other revenue sources, if the legislature will work with us to pursue additional revenue sources. This, I think, is the most flexible option as far as we have. If we have to cut more, we cut more hours. If we're able to give some hours back, then again, it's easy to do that with this option.
How many employees is affected here, total number?
We have 220 in the county.
That's just funded out of the general fund,
You're looking at about 130, between 130 and 140.
130, 140.
We do not affect solid waste or public works.
Or
These
Jackson County
dollars.
Park.
Now, we would need to discuss whether we want to include that, and if we cut all general fund, we have to cut those as well, Mr. Porter.
They're not paid for in the general fund?
Right.
I don't think so.
So that's a decision we have to make, that these dollars are only general fund, because those other dollars.
But just courthouse security can't be one of them, because the courthouse has got to be open 5 days, according to this law.
Right, yeah, courthouse security will be done by closing the south door.
Okay.
That's how we'll save the money.
Right.
And in this calculation, did you calculate the commissioner's pay?
Yes.
10%?
That's
reduction?
all elected officials also,
What would be reduced?
all county elected officials. Any other
And
questions?
how many people will it take to do a reduction of force to equivalent this amount of money?
Based on these numbers, you need about 15 people from the general fund.
15 people. In my opinion, can we do a survey and see how many people would volunteer for a temporary layoff? You can draw employment. You may get enough that we don't even have to fill a lot of these
We can do the survey.
positions. That's just an idea, it doesn't matter.
I don't see where we hurt to do a certain.
You may get 6 or 8 people that says, yes, I'd love to be on a temporary layoff for 6 months and let's see where we're at.
On the problem,
I don't think we can get
it
15.
might be a whole
I
lot.
don't know what. No,
What?
we can't get 15, that shouldn't happen.
Out of 130
Now
people,
they're still operating efficiently.
No way. But the jail right now, I mean, tell the truth, from what I've seen, from when I've been there, the jail's already running, people are running ragged, they really can't do their job now. So if we cut just one person out of the jail, I'm afraid, like Dennis said, we're gonna be in liability issue, because somebody gets hurt, somebody got dead dies, and we ain't gonna stay or watch them.
I don't know if we can exclude the jail, if they're running, but see how many folks want to have a temporary layoff and see how much money that generates.
I don't see that there's any harm in pursuing that. We need to be prepared, obviously, after we go through that process, but it doesn't hurt to pursue that, just to see. There's no guarantee for those folks that volunteer that they're gonna get it either.
Right.
The commission has to make a decision.
And you don't need to do both, that was just an idea, but now, if this is the best scenario before our reduction, so be it.
There are, 16 people or 15 people left on our
16 total.
every fund payroll
Since we
But
started.
And I think this 458, I want to say it does include the park. I'll have to check on that. The reason is because we can use any funds additional from the park. Now, if we want to take them out, we can do that. But any additional funds from the park over their operating expenses, we can put that towards the general fund. So I think I included them in this. I'll check for sure.
If it includes a part, then it excludes public works and solid waste. But everything else is inclusive.
Yeah, solid waste, we're limited. We can only take 5% of the revenue. So there's no, even cutting more there, which we need to do. We need to be obviously responsible. We cut a few positions in solid waste because we had more people than we needed.
Right.
But cutting just for the sake of the general fund does not benefit the general fund in solid waste or public works may, but I think there's some other opportunities we're looking at there to reduce costs.
Even with all these cuts, we just no new money, put toward the others.
Here's the sad side of this, I guess. It meets the 700,000 for this year. If we can't find an opportunity for next year, you've got the loss of TV and lieu tax again next year. So I think the goal should be, once we make a decision on these cuts, and once these cuts are made, I think our immediate thing should be to start pursuing that additional revenue, because it does not provide, you're right, it doesn't provide additional revenue to do anything that we need. We're operating at a bare minimum now, less than bare minimum. So even getting back to a bare minimum is going to take a new fund. So it's either we find new revenues or we continue to make the cuts from the drop in TV and lieu tax. The only reprieve I can see from this, and again, the reason I like the way on the salary part is because TV and lieu tax, you never know until you get the check. We've got our best estimate, but maybe they'll come up with something before then, to help us out. I don't know if it'll happen or not, but it gives us the opportunity. If they do, then we can bounce back
We
slightly.
won't know that till after the calendar year first.
November.
Okay.
But based on all the information we have, there's no change. We're still looking at that $250,000 drop. So we have to hope and pray and do our best to work with the legislature to see what they can do to help us for the future. And that's a point that I do want to make, and I know commissioners understand. I want to make sure all the folks understand. When it comes to raising revenue, we do not have authority. Our authority is limited by what the legislature gives us authority to do. So as far as funds for the general fund, it's really up to them as to where we go for the future. And we need to consider that as we look at our proposals over the next several months, over the next year, as long as we're here. We need to consider what options we have in pursuing additional revenue sources, unless this is how we want to operate. If we want to continue to operate like this, obviously, then we can do that. But I'd prefer to see us get back to at least the status quo we were and maybe start moving forward at some point in time. So any other questions or comments from commissioners? Again, this proposal is something Mr. Manning kind of drew up some of the items for. I looked at it this afternoon. We looked at it this morning, actually, kind of go over. And based on recommendations from all the commissioners throughout this process, that's where these notes came from. So we'll, if you'll take this, continue or to study it, I'd like to ask, we've of course got the department budgetary meetings over the next couple of days and then following on the 10th and 11th, but next commission budget meeting, I'd like to ask that we have one following our meeting. I believe we'll have a meeting on the 8th. So following our meeting on the 8th, we'll have another budget meeting with the commissioners just to follow up on this, see if there's been any discussion. Try to have, by that time, Mr. Manning, if you put that note, by that time, have a survey done to see if there's anybody that wants to participate in that. And what other questions do we have we need to make sure we're aware of by that time? Look, we'll have a little bit deeper understanding of the COA dollars and how that's going to affect their portion. And hopefully a clarification on the DA reduction. And we'll submit for the AG's opinion immediately, get that together immediately so that we can get that submitted and hopefully get something back by the 28th when we're due to pass the budget. So any other questions or comments? All right. Yep. Okay, do we have a motion? I'm sorry, we'll go on to our reports. We're going to do that. You have anything else, Mr. Rutherford?
No, sir.
Mr. Venable?
No, sir.
Mr.
No, sir.
Department heads, gentlemen? Okay, that concludes our budget meeting for this afternoon. Again, we'll have, like I said, the next full budget meeting on the 8th, and with that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion, have a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same.